Hello and welcome back to the second set of slides for this video lecture for Module 6 on interviewing and interview techniques. Now in the last video lecture I talked about some of the things that should not be raised in terms of questions by the interviewer to the interviewee, the person that is interviewing for the job. Now here I want to focus on 17 interview questions that are designed to trick or to somehow test the interviewee who is already under a fair amount of stress. So what I want to do is take a look at what kinds of questions might typically come up, and also I'm going to set up an assignment, something for you to consider in terms of answering these difficult questions. And of course, the first one usually comes at the beginning of the interview. Oh, can you tell me about yourself? Okay. Well, at the very least, what the interviewer is asking is just to see how the candidate views themselves in terms of readiness for the position. Now, what makes it tricky is the fact that because someone is asking you to sort of describe yourself, talk about yourself, people tend to revert or sort of default to personal life. No. It's not a question about your personal life. It doesn't matter where you were born, where you were raised, where you went to school. What matters is what you took in school. So when that question comes up, the response that the interviewer is looking for is a focused answer on your skill set. How are you valuable to this organization? If you want to tell me about yourself, tell me how you fit in with this group, this department, this organization, this culture. That's what matters. That's what they want to hear from you. Another one that could be tricky is, how would you describe yourself in one word? Well, again, it's another one that is maybe considered tricky, but it could be asked. So why is this question being asked? The interviewer is listening for you to describe yourself in maybe a personality type, your degree of confidence. You don't want to overdo it. You wish to be confident and assertive without being pushy and obnoxious. So that simple question, how do you describe yourself in one word, is designed to see if you can identify maybe a personality trait, kind of your one sort of overriding type A, type B sort of individual, so that the people that are talking to you, the interviewers, can kind of suss it out and figure out what you're all about. Now, the question can be challenging, right? Because especially when the question comes up fairly early on, the interviewers have not had a chance to kind of formulate an idea about you. They're kind of watching carefully. They're listening to you. They're watching you. Again, maybe not over the phone, but even over the phone, they're listening to inflections in your voice, pauses, and sort of hesitancy to answer a certain question. So what response are they looking for? It depends. What you want to do is think about that question and think about an answer that you would be comfortable with. Now, those questions, or more importantly, those answers, should be there in your mind, ready to be sort of used depending on how the question is worded. So even though the question may not be, how would you describe yourself in one word, you could turn around and answer by saying, well, if I needed to answer, describe myself in one word, it would be this. And then you kind of used another question and answered it with a sort of rehearsed answer. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's called preparedness. So proceed cautiously whenever that question comes up, because it could trip you up. Okay, how does this position compare to others that you are applying for? Really, the question is, are you applying for other jobs, right? That's what the interviewer wants to know. If you say, look, this is the only job that I'm applying for, you want to make sure that you don't call attention to yourself unduly. You don't want it to be a red flag. You don't want it to be sort of flagged in any kind of way saying, this is the only job this person's after. Well, if that's the case, how would you think about that being presented to an interviewer who may interpret that as, well, this person can only do one thing, right? So you want to make sure that you present yourself as versatile, right? And you could say something to the effect that there are several organizations with whom I'm interviewing. I have not yet decided the best fit for my next career move. Excuse me. So you can answer in a way that presents yourself as fairly broadly based, right? You're interviewing for a variety of different jobs. You finished your education or you're in a career change, but whatever you're doing, you are leaving the options open to move in different directions. Now, does that make you sound scatterbrained? No, it makes you sound like you have some options. You could be trained in the future to do different things within that organization. So how does this position compare to others you are applying for? You could say, I'm applying for different positions in different organizations. I want to see, what I can do best, what the best fit is. But you're presenting yourself as broadly based, not scatterbrained. And that's a good thing. Can you name 3 of your strengths and weaknesses? Oh boy. So this is one that comes up. These could be flags, red flags, and deal breakers. But if you turn around and say, well, I really don't work well with people. I kind of like this pandemic. I like being home. I don't like interacting with people. That's not what you want to say. That's exactly the worst thing you could say, because you could be revealing something to the interviewers that you either don't want to because you didn't prepare for that question, or you overdo it, right? And you really present like truly serious issues that do not make you an ideal candidate to be considered. So what responses are the interviewers looking for? They want to know that your strengths are the strengths that are going to be most beneficial to them. So depending on what the job is, rehearse that answer and say, okay, what would be 3 of my strengths? What would be 3 of my weaknesses? And if you do have weaknesses, and all of us do, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to correct this inadequacy, inability, deficiency, whatever you want to call it? How are you going to deal with those weaknesses? And you could say, I am aware that I wish to work with other people in a sort of organizational capacity as a group leader, as an organizer, and I'm now presently going to school to study this. I know it was a weakness in the past and may have stopped me from moving through up the corporate ladder, but I'm dealing with it. So that is presenting a weakness, but turning it very quickly into a positive. It's a little bit like the bad news letter. You identify the bad news and quickly offer an alternative. Here, you identify weakness and quickly convert it into a positive or into a strength by saying, I am aware of this and I am dealing with it in the following way. Why do you want to work here? Sounds like a valid question, right? As opposed to, wanting to be somewhere else. So that question gets asked because the interviewer wants to know, what drives you the most? What brought you to this, into this chair, in this room, at this time? What were the things that were leading up to in your life? Now, don't go back to childhood, of course. Go back over, a couple of years. But what drove you to be in that interview room at that particular point? Because it shows you have driven initiative. It shows that you've researched the company. You want to work with them because you really appreciate and value their work ethic, their sustainability ideas, their mission statement. All these kinds of things are important because they really factor into the answer to the question, why do you want to work here? Well, because I know a lot about your company, and I think it's very good, and here's why. So you want to make sure that you can present to the interviewer the reasons why this particular company, this individual company, is the one for you. So hiring managers, right, they want to see that you've taken the time to research the company. You know what you're getting into. You understand the industry. You know how it works. And if you can do that, all the other questions are going to become that much easier because the interviewer sees that you've done the work. You're ready to start. You know what you're getting into. So that is always good. Okay. Why do you want to leave your current job? If you are just coming straight out of school, that question is not going to come up. But most of us are working somewhere else. And you could respond by saying any number of things. So the question gets asked because the person that is interviewing her, is listening out for potential reasons why you might leave this new job. So if your job is being phased out where you presently are, you're about to be laid off, or your job is being phased out, or your company is joined and is merged with another company and you basically been tossed out, doesn't make you, it made you redundant in the previous job, the one you're in right now. But that's not something that is your fault. An issue like that is beyond your control because you've been affected by it. But if you are able to answer that question honestly, because it can be tricky, because you were talking about wanting to move from one job into another, the person that is about to hire you wants to know why you're leaving that job. So be honest, and they want to make sure that your stay with them is not going to be short term. You might be gone in 4 months. Now they may be hiring you for a job that does have an end date. That's different. But a question like, why do you want to leave your current job? The reason why they're asking it is they're hoping they can see that you may be looking to challenge yourself, or you have recently finished school with this new set of skills that you're willing to try out. So the better the fit that you are with the company, be honest with them again. But you could really stress when you are asked this question that you believe that the company, the organization that you're interviewing for right now is the better fit. And that's always what it seems to come down to. Are you a good fit with this particular company? That is always important. Okay, another question, which shouldn't be tricky. What are you most proud of in your career? The interviewer wants to see, what your background is, and of course, in terms of your skill set, what you're passionate about, what you do well, what you take pride in. All these things are important. Now, if that is the case, the interviewer is asking you this because they want to kind of at least guesstimate, they want to sort of have an idea of what you might be like working for them. And so the hiring managers, the HR people, are looking to see your ability, right, to articulate as best you can the kind of enthusiasm and passion and positive energy that they would embrace if they were to hire you. And again, you have to be honest, because you don't want to turn around and say, what are you most proud of? Well, nothing so far. Okay, there's got to be something, right? You could say, look, I was really happy to get a job in this particular architectural firm, or with these project managers, or whoever it is, or, a law firm, and you moved up as far as you could, and you were looking for a new challenge. Okay, so yes, I was very proud of being able to work there, but I kind of exhausted my opportunities, right? So you're proud of that initial, that position. You took it as far as you could, but you're looking for another place where that enthusiasm that you had initially in that one job can now transfer into the other. And if you can answer it that way, the HR folks are going to pay attention to you. Okay, number 8. What kind of boss and coworker have you had the most and the least success with, and why? Okay, here's where we talk about, personality types and personality conflicts, because they do come up. And how did you handle them? Were you the source of the conflict? Did you cause conflict with other people? Did someone else have a problem with you? And how did that work out? Because ultimately that question is about, well, how well do you work with people, right? How well do you work with others? And that really is important, because if you can't answer that question correctly, you may sound like you're hiding something. You don't want to have it so well rehearsed that you automatically kind of, your eyes glaze over and you have this pat answer, this sort of rehearsed answer that deflects attention from the fact that you might not be the nicest person to get along with, because you're so passionate that you can't stand people who are lazy, or these kinds of things. Be careful, right? Be careful how you answer it, because you run the risk of appearing difficult to work with or unsuccessful with others. So you want to make sure that you are a professional, that you don't get emotionally involved with people and drive them crazy, or have others drive you crazy. You can still keep a professional demeanor when you're working with others. And you can overlook certain quirks that people may have because they produce good work, right? You can work well with them despite whatever that little personality trait they may have. That's really what the interviewer wants to hear, right? They want to hear more good news than bad news. They want to hear that you've had successes and very few failures. That's really kind of, again, what are you most proud of? What is the most successful thing you've done? All those issues really matter. Okay, have you ever considered being an entrepreneur? Okay, to be an entrepreneur means to strike out on your own. You want to make sure that you answer that question carefully, because you don't want to present to the potential, well, the interviewer, the interview is happening, but your potential employer, that you may have a hidden desire to take off somewhere else. Whether you're going to take with you trade secrets, or you might headhunt the rest of the department and they're all going to go with you. Whatever it is, you don't want to make it sound like you're ready to abandon ship at the first moment, where you might get a lucky break and, let's say, an amazing bank loan to bankroll your next project. Be careful with that, because people may wish to be entrepreneurs at some point in their life. But let's say the entrepreneurship can translate and segue nicely into running a department. You're still within the organization. So if that is the case and the question comes up, you may say, well, I'm thinking less of being an entrepreneur than I wish to be a group leader, right? I wish to run a department. Okay, that softens the blow considerably, because first of all, you're still working for them, but you want to rise to the top of that department that you've been hired. And that's not a bad thing, because if you can rise up through the ranks, you will have all that wisdom and experience over the years that you work with them to be able to rise to the top of a position you want to be in, which is to run the department. So it's okay to present that kind of entrepreneurship spirit, but you want to make sure that it's going to be presented in a way that does not sound like you're going to jump ship in 6 months, right? This is kind of a stopover thing. You want to sound professional and sound like you are going to be there for a little while. So always be careful when you answer that question. Okay, in this day and age, this does happen. They may ask, have you ever been laid off and why? And this is something that has to do with, HR interviewers are aware that there are certain jobs that are being phased out on a regular basis. The amount of automation going on right now really is moving people all over the place, and we have to be able to multitask. And if we've been laid off, which is the possibility, and employers want to know, if you can hold up under pressure, if you can come back and still work without, holding a grudge, maybe, because you don't want to be bitter or angry after a layoff and you come back and, you start to sabotage things. That's at the very least very unprofessional. And it shows that you hold a grudge. So you're taking things personally. You have an emotional involvement, in the position that you're in, or you find yourself in after the layoff. Again, you want to be above board, professional, businesslike, and level-headed. So you want to be level-headed, and you, at the very least, wish to present in your answer that you understand that businesses do this kind of thing. A business, a layoff is a business decision. We had, really slow 3 quarters. And the 4th quarter, we had to lay off a small number of people. Over the last year and a half, the pandemic has caused this a number of times right across the board with all kinds of companies. So the layoff needs to be looked at professionally. And if you can do that, it makes you look professional. You're not harboring a grudge. You don't hate the company for it. You just realize this is something that the company had to do. And I was very grateful to be brought back. That, again, puts you in a good position. Now, this is a question that could come up. It's a little bit tricky, but it's certainly worth considering, which is, what if you won $5 million tomorrow or $10 million or whatever? Okay, how would you answer that question, right? Why would they even ask this? So they want to know whether you would still work, because certainly you're not going to need the money. Are you working because you're passionate, right? Are you working because this is something you really, really want to do? Because remember, if you find a job that you really love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I know this is the cliche, but there is a grain of truth to it. If you're doing something you feel really passionate about, you might put in the extra hours, you might go the extra mile, you might put in, whatever that extra effort is to make it the best it can be because you're passionate about it. But the same kind of thing is happening here. What if all of a sudden you don't really have to be there? So you turn around and you ask the question. I mean, first of all, it could be a gotcha question, right? Because it's like, what? So be prepared for the kinds of gotcha questions like this. And if you say, well, obviously it would be wonderful, but I'll tell you, what I would do is I would invest it and I would still continue working because you know what? At the end of the day, this is what I love to do. Because you could say, look, I get bored easily, or, I wouldn't know what to do with my time. I would rather stay put, have that peace of mind of having money in the bank. My kids, my grandkids will be taken care of. My house will be paid off, etc. But what the interviewer wants to hear, along with that, of course, is that you are going to continue working for them. And so ultimately, you're doing that work not because of the money. You don't need it. You're doing it because you are passionate about it. And that will be what the interviewer will hear. Oh, even if they want $5 million, they're going to stick around because it's what they love to do. Okay, that's somebody that we can hire. Okay, 13. Have you ever been asked to compromise your integrity by your supervisor or colleague? Tell us about it. Well, that kind of question is really referring to your moral or ethical compass, your ability to tell the difference between right and wrong, your ability to be ethical and take the high road and say, well, no, I did not want to participate in this Ponzi scheme or, this underhanded sort of ability for individuals to say, okay, well, at this point, we can hide some of our money in an offshore account, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But it is an ability for the interviewer to see what is your moral compass, what is your integrity, what is your your breaking point where you're going to turn around and say, yeah, I think this is a really good idea. We should go ahead with it. That's not what you want to say. You want to indicate to people that you have a strong ethical and moral compass, and that these issues, which are sensitive, if you've ever had it happen, tell us about it. How did you navigate around it and still keep your job? So you want to be clear and concise and professional in your answer. But at the same time, you also don't want to turn around and incriminate your previous employer. Be careful how you answer this. So depending on what that issue was, to lie for someone or to fudge some numbers, think it through. Think it through because your answer could incriminate someone if it's, tax evasion, tax fraud, money laundering, these things, those are serious crimes. So you want to, if you have an example, talk about things that are kind of, well, they're called white-collar crimes, and some of them are pretty benign. Be careful answering that. Have you ever been asked to compromise your integrity? Maybe the answer is no. I've worked with really good people. It has not happened. But you could turn around and say, hypothetically, if it were to happen, I would know what my answer is. The answer would be no. So that answer is still your moral compass that's being addressed. Okay, another question that is kind of along the same lines about interacting with others. Can you give us a reason why someone may not like working with you? And that has to do with personality types, ability to get along with people. And if you have an issue, do you know how to address it? Do you know how to contact HR and run through the proper channels? Or do you turn around and torment that person and the whole thing becomes just an awful emotional issue? So if you, the question is, give us a reason with someone, would not like to work with you, you need to be very careful. You don't want to dismiss that question. You don't want to be flippant, but you want to also not trivialize the question either. So think about it. You don't want to say, I'm not always the easiest person to get around, to be around. You can talk about your passions. You can talk about, I really need to work with good people because I perform at the very top of my game when I work with people that feel just as passionately as I do about completing this task. So if if you want to answer the question, and you should if it comes up, and you need to do it honestly, again, talk about your passion. This is what I love to do. And I love nothing better than working with people that feel the same way. So you may deflect the question a little bit, but the only time that you're disliked is when you need to challenge your staff. So if you are in a kind of a group leader position, you're kind of having to whip your staff into shape and get them to continue working. And that's important. But if you are the underling and you are the one that is being asked to do the task, not to delegate authority or responsibility, you wish to challenge the people you work with. Now, if it comes off as aggressive or, obnoxious, you can acknowledge it, but say the reason why I may appear this way is because I am passionate about getting this thing done and done right. So there are ways to kind of talk around it, but still address it to some degree. Why have you been out of work for so long? Okay, that is again another kind of gotcha question maybe, but you want to make sure that any gaps in your resume you can deal with, you can answer correctly, and not only correctly and honestly, but in a way that is not going to harm you as a potential candidate. So if you are answering the question very calmly and matter-of-factly, you're saying I may have taken a couple of years off to raise a family. I took a couple of years off to go back to school. That's really what that hiring manager wants to hear. They want to be able to hear you, fill in that period of time with something substantial. So it could also be that, it took a lot longer for you to go from being phased out or laid off in one job to find another job. That can happen. There are people that, as they get older, it gets a lot more difficult to smoothly transition from one job to the next because hiring managers don't want to hire people who are older. For some reason, they look down on it. But you may have a lot of experience, but as you get older, and older, I'm talking, late 40s, early 50s, at a time when you should be maybe thinking about retirement, suddenly you're laid off permanently. Now you're having to scramble to restart. So if the answer to why have you been out of work for so long is I've been looking for work for this long, this is the first interview that I've been able to secure. Now, don't worry about that because the interviewer thinks you may be a suitable candidate. It's not like they're just talking to you on the street. You've gotten past the ATS. Your resume and cover letter is good. This company thinks you're a good fit. So don't lie to them. Say, this is the first serious interview I've had in a field that I have experience in. Might have taken a little while. And especially too, if you are in a field that is where others are being laid off, you're not only not the only one, but it could be something where switching gears and starting a different career path at an older age is easier said than done. So there could be a reason why you've been out of work for a while, and just be honest. Another question, is two left here. Number 16, how did you make time for this interview? Does your boss know where you are right now? Okay, well, right now you should be working and you're clearly you're interviewing for a job. You have another one. And if you are searching for a job kind of behind the boss's back, that kind of shows that it's somewhat underhanded because at the very least, you're not doing your job, right? You're busy looking for work. So what the interviewer is looking for is some kind of explanation where you can put the job first and schedule the interview around. So you could say, look, I've taken 2 hours out of my work, but when we're done, I'm going back to work and working an extra 2 hours. Normally I finish at 5. Today I'm going to finish at 7 because I took the hours between 1 and 3 to interview with you. So that shows, again, professionalism and a business-like demeanor when it comes to, does your boss know where you are? And the answer is absolutely. The boss knows where I am. We've talked about it. The two of us decided that maybe a different company is the best fit because you've got, serious plans and you've maybe, gone as far as you can in the present company. You're looking for not a career change, but at least a different company to work with. So if the boss knows, tell them. And also be professional in terms of how you've dealt with this time frame where you should be working, but you're not. how are you going to deal with it? So whether it's before or after work, lunchtime, weekends, or whatever it took for you to accommodate and make up that time that you are spending with the interviewer, make sure that they know. And then the last one here, tell me about a time where you disagree with a company policy. Now, what this means is, again, how you get along with people, how you get along with the organization, how much you believe in it and you support it and you're passionate about it. Because the idea of I've never disagreed with a company policy, that's kind of difficult to believe, because clearly at a certain point, a company may do something that you disagree with. The issue becomes, what did you do about it? Because again, you want to see that a person can work within the confines of that organizational culture. There may be a problem. How did you deal with it? Who did you approach? Did you offer up a situation, that is clearly something you don't agree with a possible solution? So you recognize that the situation is not something you agree with. How did you deal with it? Were you reasonable, logical, and businesslike in your response? In your opposition to the policy, what did you do? What did you present to the company as an alternative? So that's essentially it. Those are all the questions that you can consider in terms of the possible tricks, the gotcha questions, and those. There's quite a few of them, but be mindful that they will come up. And when you set up your the assignment that's coming up, do have a look at these questions a little later. So we'll see you soon, and very soon in our Zoom class. Bye bye.